Welcome to the Matt Bernier Show.
Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show here live at Monmouth Park. Obviously not our normal studio situation back in New York. We're down here on the Jersey Shore. I'm Matt Bernier. If you want to follow along on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt. If you're watching live on DRF Live, thanks for doing so. If you're watching via podcast later on YouTube, thanks for doing so. You also have other alternatives. You want to listen audio-wise, YouTube, SoundCloud, DRF.com, as well as now iTunes. It's finally fixing up and going. So got a lot of things going on here. July 29th, it's a Friday. It's a little bit of a wet one down here on the Jersey Shore. It sounds like, as far as racing today is concerned here at Monmouth Park, sloppy off the turf. Got a couple scratches, so you're going to want to take a look at that if you're playing Monmouth today. But really, this show is all about this upcoming weekend. We've got a lot of good things going on, particularly here at Monmouth Park. Sunday afternoon, you've got the betfair.com Haskell Invitational, a grade $1 million. And let's start off there of this big weekend of racing. Not only because we're here, but because it's one of the only grade ones of the weekend, and it probably has the most sort of magnitude or the most weight carried going forward, not only as far as 3-year-old of the year is concerned, but possibly horse of the year is concerned. We have the return of Kentucky Derby winner Nyquist. It'll be interesting to see how he comes into this spot for Doug O'Neill. I don't think there's going to be any sort of issue as far as being short or needing a race. I think he's going to be cranked and ready to go for this spot. We also found out the other day the interesting addition of Exaggerator, the winner of the Preakness, the runner-up in the Kentucky Derby, the winner of the Santa Anita Derby. He's going to come into this spot as well. And I suppose really, let's just start there with those two head-to-head. Nyquist has taken the measure of Exaggerator a couple different times, but I think now people are looking at it saying the Triple Crown is where we want to focus. They both had won grade ones prior. Let's talk about the Triple Crown where they split it with the Derby and the Preakness. Now, maybe if you want to call this in a way a bit of a rubber match here at Monmouth Park on Sunday afternoon, you can do so. The problem I have with that is that just immediately throws a blanket over the other horses that are going to be running in the race. It's not a two-horse race. Anyone that thinks it's a two-horse race, they're sorely mistaken because you've got a couple other really good horses that are going to be in here. Particularly, let's start off with American Freedom for Bob Baffert. He came in here last year with another horse named American. It was American Pharaoh. We know what he did, winning the Triple Crown. This year he comes in with American Freedom. It'll be interesting to see. This is the ultimate acid test for this horse. He's always hinted at ability, and Baffert has always said, really from day one, that this was going to be his Haskell horse. He had mentioned Belmont at one point with him, but he said that this was going to be his Haskell horse. He's here, and if you believe in Baffert, which you kind of have to, past 5 years in the Grade 1 Haskell, 4 victories and a second-place finish. He doesn't bring tomato cans here. When he comes here, he ships in for one reason only, and that's to take the first prize. So it'll be interesting to see if American Freedom can class up and prove that he belongs to the top 3-year-olds in the country. And let's not forget about Gunrunner. Gunrunner was a good third in the Kentucky Derby behind Nyquist and Exaggerator. He's come back most recently, ran a bang-up race in the Grade 3 Matt Wynn at Churchill Downs, going a mile and 16th. Maybe this mile and an eighth plays well for him. We'll talk about race shape and the race as a whole when we bring in Dan Tordjman from America's Best Racing and the Jockey Club in a little bit. But for the time being, let's continue to set the table for you for the rest of the weekend. You've got 4 graded stakes up at Saratoga, and that's the beauty of Saratoga, obviously. Quality racing top to bottom. Doesn't matter if it's a Monday, doesn't matter if it's a Saturday. But usually the weekend we get a little bit better quality. You've got 4 gradeds, 1 grade 1, 3 grade 2s. The Amsterdam is sprinting for the 3-year-olds. It's a fascinating race. You can go so many different ways in there. Again, Dan Tordjman and I will break through all these races. And you've obviously got the stakes previews already up with Dan and Mike Beer back in the studio. But the Amsterdam is a fascinating race, one part of many, many fun exotic wagers, if you will. The Amsterdam is part of the early pick 5, not part of the late pick 4 or anything like that. So you maybe want to just factor that in with your early sort of stuff as well. The Bowling Green, I wish there was more to say, and we'll see if Dan agrees or disagrees, but it kind of feels like it's Flincher's race to lose. There's only a 5-horse field. I don't really know that he's going to have that hard a time overcoming the competition, but at the same time, you never know. It's a horse race. It's why they run the race. He does look like, on paper, he lays over the field. The Grade 1 Vanderbilt, the only Grade 1 up at Saratoga on Saturday afternoon. Fascinating race. It really looks like a war. Jorge Navarro sends 3 horses from here at Monmouth Park up north. You've got Chublicious. You've got a couple other runners as well, Delta Bluesman. It'll be very, very interesting to see if ultimately they can sort of class up, similar to the way that AP Indian, who will also be running in the Vanderbilt, did most recently down at Belmont Park in that Belmont Sprint Championship, where he ran so gamely that day, particularly because he was on the worst part of the track for the majority of the running, down on the inside on the far turn. everyone that was paying attention to Stars and Stripes Festival on the main track knows inside was not where you wanted to be at Belmont Park. Mike Watchmaker alluded to it in the Weekend Warrior video we did as far as the Vanderbilt is concerned. So Vanderbilt's a phenomenal race, very, very interesting. And the Grade 2 Jim Dandy, we've kind of come full circle back to the 3-year-olds. We've got the Haskell down here on Sunday, but Saturday up at Saratoga, another 6-horse field. But you've got a lot of quality in there. You've got the Belmont Stakes winner Creator. He'll be making his first start since that triumph at 1.5 miles. You also have Governor Malibu, who was a troubled horse in the Belmont Stakes. He ran a good 4th. And then you bring in sort of the 2 new shooters, if you will. And they're not really new shooters. They're names that we're all familiar with. Mo Heyman, who for the longest time was the prohibitive favorite for the Kentucky Derby until Nyquist took him down in Florida Derby. But he ran very well in the Kentucky Derby. And you also have Destin coming back for Todd Pletcher. Pletcher at Saratoga, graded stakes. He's got to have at least one involved. He's got Destin, and I think Destin could work out a very nice trip in this race again. We'll dive into all that and more with Dan Tordjman when we bring him in a few minutes. And again, let's not give short shrift to the West Coast. You got Del Mar. You got a lot of good stuff going on there Saturday afternoon, highlighted by the Grade 1 Clement L. Hirsch. Again, a short field. And I feel like that's sort of the overriding theme for this weekend. Not huge fields, but they're all salty. You've got a lot of quality in all of them. The Clement L. Hirsch, you have Beholder, the big mare. She's coming into it in what appears to be career form, which is kind of scary to think about because I believe she's won 17 of 21 or 22 lifetime. And you've got the up-and-coming 4-year-old in Stellar Wind. She's coming into this in good form. Most recently, a runner-up in the Grade 1 Vanity Mile. No match for Beholder at that stage in the game. We'll see maybe this time around the tables change, but I got to be honest with you. I said it yesterday when we did the preview, myself and Dan Illman, but right now I think Beholder's the best horse in the country, male or female, and we'll probably bring that up with Dan as well, Dan Tordjman, when we bring him in momentarily. We're going to take a quick break here, live from Monmouth Park, the Matt Bernier Show. When we come back, we bring in Dan Tordjman from America's Best Racing and the Jockey Club, and we'll go over all sorts of graded stakes action. We've got Dan basically for the entire show, so we got a lot of good stuff coming here on DRF Live, the Matt Bernier Show, live from Monmouth Park. Stay with us.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you build more profitable exotic bets and place them with one click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before they happen and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker, the exotic wagering app.
Breeders' Cup Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Forgo.
Back here on the Matt Bernier Show, 12:08 on the East Coast, 9:08 the West Coast, Monmouth Park. We're live. Welcome in my good friend Dan Tordjman from America's Best Racing, the Jockey Club. Probably, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the best ambassador that we have in the game for all the things that you do, for all the outreach and the amount of people that you connect with. I think you may single-handedly do more for the sport than anyone else. And I'm not just blowing smoke because you're sitting next to me. I would say that to anyone. I think you do a fantastic job of kind of trying to broaden the horizons, you know, because I think we get so stuck into the idea that normally racing is narrow-minded. I think you do a very good job to try to broaden things.
Well, I appreciate that. I certainly, wouldn't put myself, on that level, but I appreciate that. And yeah, look, I mean, I have the good fortune of being an America's Best Racing ambassador. They've really sort of, America's Best Racing has sort of empowered me and put me in the position to do a lot of the outreach that I do, bringing new fans into the sport. And then, we connected on the handicapping side.
Yep.
We love betting, we love handicapping. So naturally, it's not like this isn't work for me. I'm not trying to do anything. It's just this is my hobby.
Right.
I love horse racing. So it's pretty cool how it's evolved. We've both kind of through social media, we've connected with a lot of people, so it's all been fun. If any of it comes across that way, I appreciate it. But no, it's been great, and it's been cool to watch your evolution as from. You actually started as a TV star, so it's hard. You could
the evolution from tiny minnow to a little bit bigger minnow.
You're everywhere,
man. Just a little bit bigger minnow.
You're everywhere.
You can follow him on Twitter at DanOnymous. You can go on to his site. Is it danonymousracing.com?
Yes.
Perfect. You go on there. There's all sorts of good stuff. He also runs awesome charity contests. I think that's another thing, too. I'm really not trying to just make it sound like I'm gushing over him, but I think he does a very good job. And you do a lot of good for the people that matter the most, whether it's the horses, whether it's the jockeys, whether it's the backstretch people. I just think there's a lot of good things that you do. And that's not including the fact that he's a good handicapper. And that's part of the reason, the main reason anyway, why we're going to bring you in. Let's start off. We're going to go over two races in particular. First one, we'll just start off with in sequential order at Saratoga first off.
Okay.
We'll go with the Grade 2 Amsterdam, 3-year-olds. They're sprinting on the main track. Let's just talk about the race as a whole a little bit. You can go so many different ways, particularly because I don't think there's any superstars or any standouts in this field. Whereas maybe last year you looked at it. At the time, Holy Boss was an up-and-coming 3-year-old, and he was really kind of peaked. Where do you look at this race? Because a lot of the horses that I think are going to take money, I don't particularly love King Kranz. I hated the way Counterforce ran in the Woody Stevens. Let's start off from a pace standpoint. How do you think this thing shakes down?
From a pace standpoint, it's interesting. I think Maniacal is the fastest horse in the race. We talked about him. I think we both landed on him to a certain extent. I've got him on top. I think you've got him in the mix, something
second.
along those. Yeah, you've got him second. And then It's All Relevant is the other horse that has shown speed. In fact, I think clearly went way too fast last out. The good news here, not to insult Dylan Davis, but I would say he's getting a slight jockey upgrade here. You got Johnny taking the reins. So, it'll be interesting to see what he does on the cutback. I still think Maniacal's the fastest horse in the race. That last race was super, super impressive, very gutsy, beating older horses. And Johnny actually, if I'm correct, jumps off, right? So Johnny's off Maniacal.
Yep.
And so, that was my only sort of pause for concern with that horse. Other than that, though, I don't see too much speed in here. I don't know if I'm missing anything. I don't really see. I see a bunch of horses that are content, kind of sitting second flight. So that's why I kind of figured Maniacal would be there, and then you'd have kind of It's All Relevant maybe sitting just off. That's kind of how I see it. That's how I envision it.
I mean, we look at it exactly the same way, and that's kind of why I sided with those two in particular. I chose It's All Relevant above Maniacal just simply because I like the fact that two-back he showed he doesn't have to have the lead.
Right.
I know he was under a hammerlock with Dylan Davis, and like you say, not trying to pick on him. And we've said it all the time on DRF Live. We're not critical of the riders because no one you can't be critical of them for the job that they do. The men and women, it's the most dangerous job I think, arguably in sports.
Sure. Yep.
But our job is to be critical of certain rides.
Sure.
And I think, I don't know if it was a combination of the horse and Dylan in the most recent race
Right.
for It's All Relevant, but there's no rational excuse for going 108 and 3 for 3/4 in a mile and 16th race. It's just not.
Yeah.
So now you get John Velasquez aboard. We talk about riders. I'm of the opinion that a rider may not necessarily win a race for you, but a rider could lose the race for you.
Sure.
And again, I'm not trying to diminish the job, but I think too many people put too much credence, and I know Mike Beer believes this wholeheartedly, that he doesn't care if it's Joe Blow or if it's Javier riding. It's just a matter of don't screw it up.
Right.
Do you abide by this, or do you think that there's some? Do you read any more into it than simple as that?
No, I agree with you. I mean, look, there are very few, and so that's the thing with Saratoga. You don't generally have to look at the rider and be like, wait, who is this guy?
Right.
Do I need to worry about
It's like
this
an
guy?
all-star game.
Exactly. So generally don't have that concern. if I see, is it David Flores?
David Flores is back.
This is the
D-Flow.
David Flores?
This is D-Flow, yeah.
So,
Might be 100.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe this is like the one instance where I'm like, oh, David Flores. I don't know. I mean, look, he in his day was a phenomenal rider. But I see here, I see 19 starts for the year. He's won 5, which is pretty good. So, but I don't know where he's been. But look, I think he's got the horse, and I think ultimately, most riders you're going to see at Saratoga are more than capable. And so, I think in this instance, with as fast as this horse went last out, I don't see this being an impossible jump, coming out of that race. And you've got a couple of horses here who, frankly, have kind of like underperformed and have been sort of a little disappointing. You mentioned Counterforce earlier. I have no idea what happened in the Woody Stevens. I mean, I was super high on Counterforce coming out of the Chick Lang. I thought he closed really well. I mean, he was the only one gaining ground on Justin Squared in the Chick Lang. And I was just so disappointed in that effort last out. I don't know. I just couldn't make sense of it. Maybe maybe he bounces back. I certainly hope he does, because I was kind of I was a fan of his sort of early part of the year. So I don't know. So that's one that's sort of interesting. Quixote is another one who's who started out real strong. Sort of earlier in the year. I kind of had high hopes for him. I was actually at Charlestown when he finished second to Dig Deep.
Thought he ran very well that day.
He did. He ran really well. But, we've seen Dig Deep hasn't really, looked great since that day. So then, maybe, not as impressive. I don't know. So there are a couple of horses in here who I think if you would ask me about a month and a half ago, I would have been like, look, looking ahead to the Amsterdam, this horse probably has a decent shot at winning this race if he's in. Where today I'm like, I'm just not that excited about this horse.
So we've got a partnership with our friends at Betfair, and obviously the Betfair.com Haskell is the big main event here at Monmouth Park, which is where we are today. In the same sort of vein of Betfair as a whole, I want to throw some numbers out to you. I go through every race that I handicap and make a line. Mm-hmm. Not what I think the public is getting. It's not a morning line. It's my line, what I think these horses should be.
Right.
I'm going to throw numbers at you for this race in particular and basically tell me, would you be willing to back, or would you be laying, saying, I want no part of that horse at that price? So let's start off with the horse that you actually like. I made Maniacal 5-1. Travis Stone, the morning line maker at Saratoga, made him 5-1. Would you take 5-1? Would you back him, or would you lay him at 5?
I would take 7-2.
Really? Okay, so you're even more bullish.
Oh yeah. I think that on paper, and I think he will be bet down. I don't know if people will be scared off by Flores, but I think he will get bet down. Yeah.
It's All Relevant is the horse that I like in this spot. 12-1 on the morning line. I went as far as to make him 9-2. Now at 9-2, is that the kind of price on a horse that maybe the distance is a little bit too sharp for him?
Yeah.
Is that a little bit short for you? Would you be thinking you want to be more in the sort of lay side than the back?
Yeah, this may be a little short. I would lay at that price. I'm looking more at 8-1 is kind of would be kind of the price, the range that I'd be looking at.
Before we get off the Amsterdam and we take a quick break before we come back and dive into more graded stakes action with Dan Tordjman, we've got to talk about Mind Your Biscuits. Mind Your Biscuits, the New York bred, because we briefly talked about it when we first got here. What do you do with a horse like Mind Your Biscuits, who has the highest last out buyer in the field with a 94? And if you watch the tape of that replay, he wasn't a loser at any point.
Right.
Rosario never basically got him out of a gallop. He won for fun. If he runs that race back, he's a major player. What do you do with a horse like this?
I don't use the horse for. I don't use the horse. I mean, look.
You throw him completely?
Yeah, okay. State bred allowance jumping up here, and plus, if you believe in a bounce, I mean that's a 14-point jump off of his prior race. That's speaking in terms of his buyers. I just don't. I mean, and I know that look, the horse might offer some value. I don't know. Speaking of lines, what did you have for Mind Your Biscuits?
Travis Stone made him 9-2 on the morning line. I made him 6-1. So basically a 15% chance, give or take a point or two, depending on how you want to go through. Mainly the thing for me, and I picked him third in here as far as picks are concerned, simply because I think he's going to work out a good trip, and I do love that he's shown he doesn't have to be coming from a mile and a half out of it like he was in the Mike Lee. He can be much more tactical, much more handy like he was in that most recent start, again, albeit against much softer company.
Yeah, and he has a good race at Saratoga last year. I mean, a really nice race, beating 6 lengths, but posted an 80 buyer. at 2. I mean, that's pretty nice. So yeah, and from a sort of a pace perspective, I mean, I could sort of envision that. See, like a horse like King Kranz is a horse that I don't like at all here because I think he's going to be too close to it. I think he backs up, and then
I also question how good he actually is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And so I think a horse like Mind Your Business, Biscuits, could run into a piece of it, but I would hope for a better price than 9-2. 9-2 seems kind of short for a horse making this kind of jump, at least in my opinion. So
Amsterdam is in the book. We're going to take a quick commercial break here on the Matt Bernier Show, live from Monmouth Park with our guest Dan Tordjman. When we come back, 2 more graded stakes to go over up at Saratoga. We've got more than just 2, but 2 graded stakes for this next little segment: the Bowling Green or the Flintshire Derby, whatever you'd like to call it, as well as the Grade 1 Vanderbilt. Stay with us here on DRF Live.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you build more profitable exotic bets and place them with one click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before they happen and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker, the exotic wagering app.
Breeders' Cup Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Forgo.
Back here at the Matt Bernier Show, live from Monmouth Park. It's about, if my thing would work, 12:22 on the East Coast, 9:22 the West Coast. Our guest this week, Dan Tordjman, America's Best Racing, the Jockey Club, Danonymous Man on Twitter, danonymousracing.com. The entire resume. You can actually, if you need to send him a tweet or anything, he'll probably send you that resume if you need it for any reason. Let's go over some more graded stakes action. We've got 3 more gradeds to go over from Saratoga. We're going to go over 2 of them right now in this next segment, though. Let's start off race number 7 on Saturday afternoon, mile and 3/8 on the inner turf course, the Grade 2 Bowling Green. Only 5 horses are going to be going in this spot. At the end of the day, it begins and ends with Flintshire. Is it as simple as single him and move on, or do you think there's a scenario in which it gets beat? And if so, explain to me how. Because I tried to make a case for another horse we'll talk about, but go on.
Yeah, and like we've discussed this race a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of quality in this field, but it doesn't at least appear that any of them are on the level of Flintshire. So, I mean, in terms of singling, yes. In terms of making money on this race and betting this race, I think the approach needs to be similar to what a lot of people I know did in the Manhattan, which is they really just kind of crushed the exacta. They said, let me find the horse who's going to round out this exacta, and let me just, sort of just bet a ton of money on that. And so, I mean, you could just sit back and watch it and enjoy it, but we're bettors, most of us, and so we want some action. If you want action, I would highly recommend the straight exacta or even straight trifecta if you want to get a little bold. I don't see anybody beating Flintshire.
From a pace standpoint, now this is the case I was trying to make for Grand Tito,
right,
where he has one way to go, and that's to the front.
Sure.
And really, other than him, race is more or less void of pace.
Right.
The thing about Flintshire is his North American races, he hasn't been coming from a mile out of it. And, heck, even his international races, he doesn't come from that far out of it. I wonder if he just sits just off, and Javier just waits and waits and waits. The other thing, too, that makes me a little bit concerned, I understand Grant Tito has run well enough at these longer distances. I think people, I don't want to say are forgetting, but I think we're not giving enough credence, or we're not taking into consideration enough the race that Flincher ran in on Belmont Stakes Day, the Manhattan. Mile and a quarter is a little bit short for him, and he was still much the best.
Right.
I understand people want to say that Ironicus, if he had clean run, maybe would have been closer. He gets out to a mile and 3/8 today, ultimately trying to get out to that mile and a half, I would imagine, long-term sword dancer. This is more his game. I think Grant Tito's going to have a hard time holding him off.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and look, let's say you mentioned the sword dancer. I mean, let's not forget the race that he ran. I mean, he's proven over the course, too. I mean, so there's no question there.
Right.
If you want to just sort of throw out, like, random things and say, well, maybe this will, get him, say, maybe it'll be a little off, here or there. I mean, like, there's really zero question marks here in my mind. The distance is right. The surface is right. Everything's right. And, I don't really see any way, unless he's just not feeling well. I mean,
right.
that he gets beaten. So you mentioned Grant Tito. I mean, look, Grant Tito to me, that's one where he's listed at 6-1, and we could talk about
Sure.
what you've said for him yourself and what you think he might go off at, and what an exacta might pay to Grant Tito. But he also has a huge race over the course. The Bernard Baruch last year finished second to Ironicus, beating the length and a quarter in a race where we know Ironicus had a track record. So there's plenty to like about Grant Tito, both from a pace perspective, at least holding on to maybe second, and also from based on the fact that he has a huge race over the course. Those are two big pluses for me.
The toughest thing is Grant Tito, and not just Grant Tito. I don't want to give the rest of the field short shrift. I mean, Twilight Eclipse at one point was the world record holder. I understand it was at Gulfstream on that sort of rock-hard turf course, but he was the world record holder at a mile and a half at one point. Danish Dynaformer, very nice horse from north of the border in Canada. Can't help believing, very nice horse. We're not dealing with bums. The problem is they may be going up against a monster, and I think that's the thing that makes it so tough. And you can tell 5 horses in a grade 2. They knew he was pointing here. We're out of here. We'll go elsewhere. We'll wait.
Exactly.
We'll take our toys and go somewhere else. So
Exactly.
I wish there was more to say about this race. From an odds standpoint, I know I'm not going to get the 2-5 that I made Flintshire. And I got to be honest, even if it's 3-5, I'm not in the business of betting horses to win at 3-5. But as far as an exacta is concerned, kind of like you had laid out, maybe it is a cold 2-5 exacta. I made Grant Tito 6-1. So if you're just looking at it from a percentage standpoint, 2-5, about 70%.
Right.
6-1, about 15% if you multiply the two of them together. I was not a math major as far as doing
pretty
mental
good,
math. So you can do it at home.
Right.
Do it on your own. The idea is it's not going to be a giant number.
Right.
So there's a scenario in which I could look at it and say if I could get, I don't know what the math turns out to be, but $13 or $12, I don't think it'll ever happen.
Right.
But if you could get $10 to $12, maybe that does sort of constitute value.
If you're going to play a cold try and, who knows who finishes third in the race, let's just say, who do you think the third best horse in this race is tomorrow? Who could potentially, who would you potentially use to fill out a try? For me, it would probably be Can't Help Believing. Yeah,
Can't Help Believing's a really nice horse. I have no complaints, no knocks against, really. Think very good form, sneaky good form for Graham Motion. Actually, most recently ran down here at Monmouth in the Grade 1 United Nations. Again, from a tactical standpoint, I want a horse that's going to be close, and there's a part of me that thinks this is going to essentially be a merry-go-round. Yeah. Where you've got Grant Tito, you've got Flincher sitting just off of him. I think he takes over, turning for home. But I think the horse right in behind them is the old war vet, Twilight Eclipse. I think he just sits a beautiful trip in this spot. And again, I hate to sort of chalk out because I think those are the 3 horses that people are going to be mostly looking at. But this is a race for me. It's not part of anything major. It's part of it's kickoff like the Grand Slam. I'm not a big Grand Slam player. I don't know about you.
I don't play the Grand Slam. No.
I got to be honest. I don't understand it completely, but that's another story. You got pick 3s and whatnot, but boy, anything with Flintshire involved, my goodness, is going to be this big. So for me, as a whole, the 7th race at Saratoga, sit back and watch and hope that he puts on a show. The 9th race at Saratoga, it's the Grade 1 Vanderbilt, the only Grade 1 going on up at Saratoga among the 4 gradeds on Saturday afternoon. You've got a very, very interesting field. 8 horses are going to go in this spot. Navarro sending 3 north. You've got Chublicious. You got Delta Bluesman. You've also got a horse in Catalina Red who ran so well at Churchill Downs on the Derby undercard and then ran, I thought, so poorly in the True North. Let's start off with that because there are a couple of horses coming out of that True North. Catalina Red. You've also got Holy Boss, who puts the blinkers on for the first time in his career. There's a lot of speed in this race. The True North as a whole, I feel like you need to make a decision. Did you like it or didn't you like it? Where do you land?
I think you could see horses coming out of that race and running better because they didn't necessarily want to be as close to a pace that was that hot and contested as they did. That being said, I think Catalina Red, if you could call, a 100 buyer and fourth place finish in a grade 2 a bounce, I thought bounced out of the race at Churchill. I can see sort of an improvement, another sort of, kind of a step forward maybe coming off of that race. I'm a little higher on Catalina Red coming back than I am Holy Boss. Holy Boss is, and this is just sort of, and we get like this as horse players. The horses just cost me way too much money. So I have to,
throw him out. I
have to, which means everyone watching now is the time to
winner.
fire.
He's a winner.
So he'll win probably. But look, Holy Boss is consistent. If you're looking again just on numbers, just on speed figures, he's always 100 and up, always going to run an honest race. I just don't know. He seems to have lost a step to me. I think we talked about the blinkers being on. That's they're starting to mess with equipment a little bit, and I don't know that maybe it does make the difference for him. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right with Holy Boss, and so I'm kind of on that one. And the horse that I ended up on is Delta Bluesman. I think we kind of see the pace scenario sort of a little differently here. I think you felt that the pace would be too hot and it would take a toll on him eventually, whereas I thought he was the fastest horse and would probably just get to the lead and hopefully settle on an easy lead.
This is one of those fascinating things, particularly about sprints, and I think even more so for a race like a turf sprint, where even you're always going to have a lot of speed signed on, but the way that you're looking at it, and I know a lot of people do the same thing, and I think it's a legitimate angle. Who is the speed of the speed, though? Who's the fastest of the fast? Right. Because, look, the riders and the trainers and everyone, they handicap the race as well. They go through it. Right. They say, okay, let's see. Top to bottom, Anchor Down's got a little bit of tactical speed. Catalina Red, tactical, but wants to be forward. Delta Bluesman, never passed a parked car. AP Indian, up until his most recent start, never passed a parked car. Right. The 5 Holy Boss, never passed a parked car. Chublicious can sit a little bit. Requite wants to be forward the place. Looks like there's going to be a lot of speed signed on. All of a sudden, and we've seen it so many times, some of these riders all of a sudden grab. And, boy, if you've got the fastest of the fast, and look, I think Delta Bluesman is certainly the fastest horse early on. I think you can make a legitimate case that he can just shake loose and shake clear and say, come and catch me. For what it's worth, a little bit of a formulator fact. This works for both Delta Bluesman and Chublicious. Over the past year, winner last out, dirt sprint graded stakes for Jorge Navarro, 5 for 8 with a 617 ROI. Obviously, you've got a little bit of private zone in there. You've got some other runners, but a lot of this is recent stuff, particularly here. Now, again, that's another thing, and we've got to talk about it. We're here at Monmouth Park. Navarro's based here during the summer at Monmouth Park. He's got horses still down in Florida as well. Does it bother you, at this point in the game anyway, seeing Navarro in New York? Is it kind of, I'm going to take a step back, knowing he does so well here and he does so well at Gulfstream, going to New York, different ballgame. Do you read into that at all? It's
interesting. It did to a point when I saw him at Churchill show up. I said, well, it's Churchill, not here.
Different story, yeah.
And then he made me look silly on on Derby weekends.
Catalina Red,
so
a lot of good
made
ones.
Me look totally silly. So, I'm gonna put my faith in the horse and say, if the horse could do it over one surface, he could do it over another. With Delta Bluesman specifically, he's run well at Gulfstream. He's run well here at Monmouth Park. And, specifically at Monmouth Park, that race 3 back where he actually beat AP Indian, who's kind of like, like an outlier sort of. I don't know what to make of this horse. Has he turned the corner now? Is he going to, gonna take that next step and just sort of be a solid force in this, in this division? So I don't know what to make of that, but he beat AP and he was taken down via DQ, but he was well clear of him. I thought it was sort of, I don't know if you remember that race in particular, but it was kind of like, ticky-tack, a little sort of incidental contact, brought him down. But, that's kind of where I'm at. AP Indian's interesting, and I'd be interested in hearing your opinion on him because he ran, just sort of, the race he ran at Belmont last out was just, it was shocking to me. I couldn't believe how you ran that well.
Well, it was one of those things for me, and I kind of made mention to it that he had never passed a horse in his life. So when he didn't make the front, which I thought if they really wanted to, I thought Bravo could have cleared and gotten to the front, even ahead of Private Zone, who never looked comfortable at any point. I wanted no part of him in that spot. the fact that not only did he pass the horse AP Indian, but he did it on what most would argue was not the ideal part of the track. Now, look, I personally don't think the rail was death. I don't think it was good.
Right.
I almost wonder if it was the reverse, where it wasn't so much that the inside was terrible as much as the outside was just where you wanted to be. And it's almost like an illusion where the horses on the outside are making the move. I don't think the rail was dead. If the rail was dead, and you believe that, this horse could be that race. Not only did he get a 102 buyer, but maybe it was 5 times better than it even looked on paper.
Right.
That's the only reason that I'm a little bit hesitant to go as far as to say that the rail was completely dead.
Right.
I understand it probably wasn't ideal, and he was running against the grain that day. I thought he ran a giant race. I think he's got a huge chance in here. The problem is, I felt like 5-1.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, he has every right to win. I made him 5-1. I just don't know that I'm content in a race that I think is as wide open as this one is. When you go through, if you make a value line, if you've ever done it before, it has to total 100 points. It's not a morning line where you're incorporating the takeout. It has to be 100 on the nose. Can't be a point less, point higher. I went through, and a lot of people immediately look at this and say, well, you're an idiot. You can't have that many horses at those prices. I get it. That's not the point. The exercise is going 1 through 8. I have 6-1, 7-1, 6-1, 5-1, 7-1, 6-1, 9-1, 32-1. The way I'm looking at it is I'm just going to be really surprised if All-Star Red wins this race, and I won't be surprised if any of the other 7 do. So I don't have a super strong opinion in here. I went with Chublicious, one of the other Navarros, just because I do think if things get hot early on, he's shown in the past that he can sit. And I thought his most recent start, I understand he only won by a length and a quarter. If you watch the replay, on the far turn, he looked, again, I'm stealing one of Mike Beer's lines, he looked kind of like a car. Like he was driving while all the other horses were running. Like he was moving that much better than everyone.
Right.
And then as they turned for home, he had to angle out a little bit. He was impeded with slightly, and he finished full of run. He's getting in. If you're a weight person, he's in at 115. He's the lightest in here. I don't know. Again, I mean, I don't have a super strong opinion, but I know I'm going to get a number on him.
Yeah. If there was a race to spread, I would say it's this one. That there are question marks with almost every horse. The one thing I know for certain for me is that Delta Bluesman's going to be on the lead, and whether anyone else is pressing him, I don't know. A horse that I kind of came up with as who could either offer token pressure or just sit back, and I think he'd be better served sitting just off, would be Requite.
Yes.
This is a very interesting horse. This horse finished second in last year's Amsterdam to Holy Boss. He's off for, what, was that 8 months?
Long time.
Yeah, off for a while, comes back.
10 months.
10 months, runs a huge race. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that horse could be anything. I mean, we don't know what Requite is. And so that's when I see listed 12-1. I'm thinking if you get 10-1 on a horse like Requite, I mean, that's crazy value for a horse who's shown upside. He's lightly raced. Why not?
You get Javier, you could do much worse than getting Javier at the spot. The only thing for me with this horse, he was gone for such a long time. And if you go back, his Amsterdam, I thought he ran very well. He shot up the wood. He got a great trip, got a great ride from Javier. Wasn't quite good enough. And again, that was when Holy Boss was just that much better than the other 3-year-olds. The problem I had with that return effort, I understand he went out there and he got the job done. He got the easiest of leads. And then when he turned for home, he didn't change leads at any point, which is something that he hadn't done in the Amsterdam. And I believe even if you go back to that other race at Gulfstream back in June of last year, for me, you've got an injury-induced layoff, and then you come back and you don't change leads. You're doing something. It just, again, George Weaver, respect everything he sends out up there.
Yep.
It's just a matter of, again, if you told me 10-1, I made him 9-1, yeah, I'd be interested. But there's a part of me that thinks that he's sort of the wise guy in this race, if there is a wise guy horse.
Right.
And he's the one that ends up at 6-1. And at 6, I'm a lot less interested than I am at 10 or 12.
I'd agree with that. I totally agree with that, yeah. And I know Anchor Down was a horse that we kind of mentioned briefly. I don't know what your take is on this horse. He basically, his race here last year wasn't great. He cuts back here. A horse that never works out for me personally. I don't know if he works out for anybody, but I don't hold as much of a grudge against him as I do Holy Boss. But it just didn't feel like the right spot for him for me. The
only thing I'll say is the mile is clearly too far for him because it looked like he was ready to fall down for the final eighth of a mile. And I understand he ran second, and that's an accomplishment, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, he was never threatening. No one was threatening Frosted that day. I think getting back to the 6 is going to be much more beneficial for him, and I think he has the ability to sit. The problem is I think that inside post could be a bit of an issue because he's going to have to make a decision, I think. Jose, are you going to go or are you going to try to take back and work something out? Not an easy spot to be breaking from the rail in a race loaded with pace, and you've got to assume people are going to be trying to get over. So The Grade 1 Vanderbilt up at Saratoga, race number 9. Fascinating race, goes so many different ways. We're going to take a break here on the Matt Bernier Show, live from Monmouth Park. When we come back, the 3-year-olds take center stage. We'll talk about the Grade 2 Jim Dandy up at Saratoga, and then the main event here at Monmouth Park on Sunday afternoon, the betfair.com Haskell Invitational. You've got the return of the Derby winner, the return of the Preakness winner. Got a lot of good horses showing up. Stay with us.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you build more profitable.
Quite frankly, everyone should sign up for DRF Bets. The 5 great reasons to join DRF Bets is a sign-up bonus. That's number 1. You're going to get money right in your account, right off the bat, so you can go out and play the races. After that, you have rewards, HD video, free PPs, and then it's very easy to get your money in and out, so you can bet when you want. I want everything to be easy, and DRF Bets makes it easy for me.
Breeders' Cup Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Forgo.
Back here on the Matt Bernier Show. It's a shade after 12:42-ish in that ballpark on the East Coast, 9:42 West Coast. Dan Tordjman, my guest. You can follow him on Twitter at DanOnymousMan, among other places. DanOnymousRacing.com. You name it. He's there. You follow it. Let's get into the 3-year-olds. We've got 2 more as far as we want to go over in depth, and then we'll briefly touch on the big mare out in Southern California. But let's talk about the 3-year-olds. The 10th race at Saratoga, the Grade 2 Jim Dandy. You've only got a field of 6. Got 2 6-horse fields, but quality in both of them. As far as the Jim Dandy is concerned, I understand it's a Grade 2, and you want to win a graded stakes race. This is a prep for the Travers. The goal for all of these horses is the Travers. Whereas Sunday here at Monmouth in the betfair.com Haskell, it's a Grade 1. You've got a better field there, and I think the Haskell probably has a little bit more long-term as far as ramifications are concerned, maybe year-end. 3-year-old, maybe even horse of the year if some crazy things happen, as opposed to the Jim Dandy, where I feel like in all intents and purposes, this is a prep to get to their end goal at Saratoga, the Grade 1 Travers.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, and we've seen over the past few years things don't always work, I guess, go according to plan. Right. But yeah, I mean, look, and this year's field, I mean, I don't know if you want to transition sharply into the actual race here for the Dandy, but this year's field is kind of, it's interesting because, I mean, there are a couple of horses I would consider, headliners. It's a really, really,
it's a fantastic race.
It's a great field. Yeah. There's really only one horse that we don't know too much about in terms of, we haven't seen him as much as the others, and that would be Race Me Home. But, even Lauban is a horse who, for me... And
Go ahead. Talk about Lauban. You want to take a shot. Go on.
Look, the majority of sort of big hits in my life that I've made, and I've made a couple of nice scores, standing next to you at Saratoga, have been on horses who get overlooked because, pound for pound, They may not be good as the top 2 or 3 horses in that race, but they're the lone speed horse. And I look for horses who have just enough class that their speed kind of carries them and takes them, over it kind of bridges the gap between, what they might lack in class. And so Laban, again, it is obviously is a maiden, as some people may know.
I would just like him to win a race first. And I think he there's no denying. He has ability. He can run a little.
Yeah.
Let's crawl before we try to run.
Sure. So, look, I'm not looking for him to win the race. I'm not. But I do think he can round out an exacta because I think he's loose on the lead. And in Keeneland, at Keeneland, he ran, just crazy fast splits, a 46 and 3/2. Then he slowed it down a little bit, but then, kind of turning for home, your expectation might have been that this horse is going to back up through the field. And inside the final 16th, I thought that he was actually going to hold on for second. He got passed late by My Man Sam and Cherry Wine. But he's a horse that he showed me something that day where, it's not a win at the end of the day. He still has that big M next to him. But he showed me something that day that he's got stamina, he can go fast, and he can, and he can hang in. And so, look, can he win? Probably not. I would probably be surprised if he. I would definitely be surprised if he won. Let me just say that. But can he hold on? For the place money, I think so. So, we'll leave it, sort of in suspense as to who my actual choice is to win. But I'll let you react to that.
But particularly, and look, the way that you've laid it out, I think that makes perfect sense. Where this is a race, there's not a lot of confirmed early pace. It's him. It's probably Destin, who we'll talk about momentarily. I think this is a scenario in which he hangs around for third or fourth, where he rounds out your exotics. I just can't envision this horse. And again, it's not a knock. I think he can run, but you alluded to it at the top. I mean, this is a this is a Grade 1 caliber field.
Yeah,
we're not talking about Alpha. No disrespect, Travers winner. We're not talking about Golden Ticket.
Right.
We're talking about some legitimately good horses. I will be stunned if he wins, and I'll be pretty surprised if he runs second. I think he can hit the board. And guess what? You'll get paid if he does run second.
Right.
That's all I'll say.
That's my hope. That's my plan. I mean, look, if I'm going to bet a 6-horse field, and again, I do have the option of just sitting back and watching this race because it should be pretty entertaining.
Sure.
And then, when they run again.
That's probably where I'll be.
Yeah. If they run, if 2 or 3 of these or 4 of them come back later in August, it'll be an even better race, and that'll be the race to bet. That'll be, probably a better opportunity than this, I would imagine. But yeah, if I'm gonna bet this race, I'm gonna use Laban, on a couple of exacta tickets, and yeah.
Let's talk about the horse that you like, and I need to know all the details because I loved him in the Belmont. We don't need to go over it again. It's just finally healing, the wound. It's just finally healing. Tell me about Governor Malibu and why you think this is going to work for him, particularly in a race where I don't think there's a ton of pace. Is he going to be a little bit more forward, similar to where he is in the Belmont, or is there a situation where he's going to have to come from the back and he's got to run with Creator?
I think we've seen him more forwardly placed. I don't think he needs to be, 10 lengths off. In fact, he really has never been at 10 lengths off. I mean, the Peter Pan, he was, 5 to 10 lengths off, throughout, the early part of the race. And then, closed obviously real sharply to nearly get up and catch Unified, who, again, Unified's a horse where I wonder now in retrospect, when we saw him here a few weeks later, or a few weeks ago, actually, in the Pegasus. Yep. I wonder, but again, that horse, I don't think is meant to go long anyway, so it doesn't really matter that he was tiring a little bit at the end of that race. But I thought he showed enough. I know Clement, I interviewed Clement actually about 2 months ago after the horse ran at Laurel and was actually DQ'd.
Yep.
And I know that even though the horse lost and was DQ'd, Clement was so excited that the horse had shown him that, had shown him just what he wanted to see in terms of yes, this horse is a horse that wants to go 2 turns, is going to relish stretching out, the longer we send him. And so I think there are no concerns there. I think he could sit within 2 or 3 lengths of the pace. And if you're looking at Creator being, kind of way back, I don't see him closing into, the exacta. I don't see, Destin is one of these horses kind of, for me, I've always been kind of tough on him. I don't know why, but he could certainly be there. They could sort of be, kind of side by side, or maybe he's just, maybe he's just a drop behind Destin. But yeah, look, my reasoning for liking Governor Malibu here is simple. Maybe it's just me, being attached to him because he was my horse Belmont Day. Obviously, he endured what was, can be described as nothing less than like just an absolutely just miserable trip. Let's call it. There was no way to, he had multiple, there were multiple opportunities, multiple moments during the race where I thought, here you go, just shoot through there. He's going to go. And I don't know if he was going to win. I've heard people argue that he could have won the Belmont. I don't know that it was a 4-length difference. Yeah. But I think he certainly is much closer. He certainly hits the board. It finishes ahead of Lonnie, which was a horse that I did not have on any of my tickets. So I mean, look, I remember, I'm replaying that race like you said. The heels are the wheels are just healing
just now. Yeah,
and
so a month and change. Yeah.
I played the race over and over again in my mind, and I've also watched it a few other times, sort of sadistically, and so I think that. This is the day, and if it's not the day, then I think we'll see him later on. But for me, I think he's better than what we've seen of him. I don't think he's really had the opportunity to show his best, and I think he could stick close enough to the pace to actually make that run at the end.
So this is going to be a nice sort of segue from this race into the Haskell, because the way that I'm looking at Governor Malibu, I feel like we haven't seen his best just yet. Where I think there are scenarios in which maybe we've seen the best of Destin, maybe we've seen the best of Mo Heyman, who we haven't made mention of, the morning line favorite, 9-5. Look, Mo Heyman, I think he's going to run a very good race. I think he's going to give a good account of himself tomorrow afternoon. I think Destin, I picked him. It's a very tepid pick just because of the dynamics of the race.
Right.
I said to you before we came in here, I feel like this race for me, it's the two horses that have tactical speed that will be in good position, Destin and Mo Heyman. But talk to me 4 weeks from now. I think I'm going to want Governor Malibu and Creator going 1.25 miles, getting more honest pace in front of them.
Sure.
But transitioning the sort of notion and the idea of maybe we haven't seen a horse's best as opposed to the other main competitors. Maybe we have seen their best. The Grade 1 Betfair.com Haskell on Sunday afternoon here at Monmouth Park. It's a fascinating race from a dynamic standpoint. It's a fascinating race from a storyline standpoint. Some people want to bill it as the rubber match between Nyquist and Exaggerator. I have a hard time doing that because Exaggerator's beaten Nyquist one time. I understand if we want to use the Triple Crown as just sort of the platform, it is what it is. First things first, tactically, Nyquist is drawn on the rail. Does Mario have to go?
Well, I mean, so the question is, does he feel burned? Does he still feel, is he sort of scarred by the Preakness run? And does he get a little, is he a little hesitant or timid to actually go for it, seeing as, that he obviously, the horse sort of, burned himself out and still ran on really well to finish third, obviously. Look, I think Nyquist is the best horse in the field. I'm interested in Awesome Slew, and I think he's sort of a wild card here. I think we know American Freedom is going to be on the lead, is going to set the pace, and then you could sort of envision Awesome Slew. I'm thinking with the blinkers on, actually, I'm thinking the horse is up at the pace. I don't know if he's fast enough to stick with American Freedom, but maybe he is. And in that case, if you've got two horses battling, I mean, that makes the decision a lot easier. Sure. Then Mario could just say, you know what, let them, knock each other's heads in, and he could just sit right off of them. If American Freedom is loose, I think he's going to have a decision to make, and I guess he just has to, his clock, needs to tell him, is this horse, is this a suicidal pace, or is this, am I going to repeat what I did, a month ago or a couple months ago, or am I going to sit just off and let this horse burn himself out and make, try to make a move late?
To me, there are three keys to this race, the way that I'm looking at it anyway. One is American Freedom for a few reasons. American Freedom, Bob Baffert trained Baffert over the past 5 years in the Haskell, 4 victories and a second-place finish. He doesn't send horses here for the frequent flyer miles. He comes here for a reason, and that's to win. Two, from American Freedom's standpoint, is he truly this good? Because this is the acid test. He's run up against some less than stellar competition in his time as a racehorse. The only time he's faced what I would argue is borderline grade 2, grade 1 caliber horses. He got buried. I understand it was a weird track down at Churchill in the Pat Day Mile, but he came back in the Sir Barton. Nice horses in there, not superstars. Beat them. Looked like he was beaten on the far turn. Then he came back, and I understand he won that most recent start in the Iowa Derby, but Texas Chrome is in a different league compared to these horses.
Yeah.
Two, is he good enough to kind of push Nyquist early on? And I'm basically laying out the reason, or the way that I'm hoping things play out for the horse that I like. if he's good enough and Nyquist has to make a decision, Mario has to go, is American Freedom good enough to just kind of tucker him out a little bit? Because then, at that point, I think it sets up for a horse that's going to work out a beautiful trip, we'll touch on in a minute. The second overall key for me in this race is Exaggerator, simply because I want no part of him, and I need him to take money. And I think he's going to take money. He's a name. People look at him and say he's the Frazier to Ali. He's the, however you want, any sort of analogy you want to make. And 3, the weather. Right now, it sounds like it's about a 50-50 shot that it's going to rain on Sunday. You already heard, I think you probably just heard the call from Frank Miramati, today's opener on a sloppy track. The forecast is saying if it does rain Sunday, it's not just going to rain, it's going to pour. It could be a washout. Now, obviously, that helps Exaggerator. It doesn't hurt Nyquist. Long story short, all of this comes back for me anyway, and I know you look at it similarly. I don't know if you like this horse, particularly from a pick standpoint or wagering. It comes back to Gunrunner for me. Now, I've never liked Gunrunner. You and I bashed Gunrunner leading up to the Derby, going into, I believe we talked prior to the Louisiana Derby, and we said he's a bum because he's an idiot.
He doesn't want a mile and an eighth.
He doesn't want a mile and an eighth, da-da-da-da-da. I've started to warm up to this horse a little bit, knowing full well that, guess what? He's not going to do what I want him to do. He's not going to change leads and stay on his right lead down the lane. He's going to hop back to his left lead. I hate it, but guess what? I've gotten to the point now where I see Catch a Glimpse do it 15 times down the lane, and she's dynamite, so why am I going to argue with it? I think he works out a beautiful trip just in behind those 2 horses. I thought his Matt win was fantastic, and I feel like, similarly to Governor Malibu, I don't know that we've seen the best from Gunrunner yet. There's a part of me that wonders if we've seen the best from Nyquist, if we've seen the best from Exaggerator. I'm actually going to go out on a limb and say we have seen the best from Exaggerator. Don't know about American Freedom yet, but I also don't know if he's this good. If you just play process of elimination, and also you look at the way this race sets up, I think Gunrunner's got a big shot in here.
Yeah, I think me and you, we're both on the same page with Gunrunner. I think we've gone through the same sort of, the same stages with Gunrunner. Like, now we're at acceptance, and I don't know if we'll ever get to the point.
I may be turning from acceptance to actual. You know what? I kind of like this horse a little bit.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I would like. It's like one of these things. Like, if you think about relationship wise, like, I might hook up with this horse, but I'm not going full blown and going to commit to a relationship yet. I mean, I'm not going to go that far. I know. Well, good thing there's no audience to react to this. I'm using you as my gauge. That'll probably come back to burn me. I hope no one's recording this.
That was good.
But anyway,
that was funny.
Getting back to Gunrunner, and look, you mentioned Texas Chrome. He was about 8 lengths clear of Texas Chrome without even trying. And what I like about the Matt win, even though it was just like you say, well, it was the Matt win, soft field and everything else, he did it on the lead. And we talked about, he talked about a trip. I'm not as even concerned about the trip because he hasn't always had the ideal trip, but he's always worked out a trip for himself. He's a smart horse. I mean, he's a horse who can, make it look easy, I think, a lot of times. And I think that's what we were overlooking when we first, started analyzing him in the spring. Yeah. I think we're like, oh, well, this guy, he was on the rail, and then, and then a hole opened up. Like, no, like he was brave enough to shoot through the holes that were available to him. Last out, he needed to be on the lead. He did it on the lead, did it easily. Kind of responded to restraint when Giroux, slowed him down a little bit. And so he's one of these horses who just, to me, seems really smart. He seems like he's headed in the right direction. I mean, the buyers are consistently going up and up and up. Hit a 99 in the Matt win. If he clears 100 here, I think there's a very good chance he wins this race. I mean, you could say Nyquist might, Nyquist, if Nyquist is completely fit and ready to run here, he's going to be tough. But I think those horses have to be 1-2. And from a betting perspective, I'm with Gunrunner because I think you're going to get a lot more value there, obviously. And, I'm with you. I'm with you on Gunrunner.
I think you bring up a major thing, too, that I love. You just look at his past performances. He's backed up one time in his career from a buyer standpoint, and it was by 2 points. Other than that, every single race gets a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And I feel very similarly to Governor Malibu. I understand the Fig came back lighter than his Peter Pan in the Belmont.
Yeah.
He ran a much better race, in my opinion, in the Belmont than he did in the Peter Pan.
Agreed.
And I think he's just slowly taking steps forward. And again, the difference for me is I feel like this has been the goal for this horse all along. The Jim Dandy is not the goal tomorrow for horses like Governor Malibu, and Creator. And look, even Mohaymen and Destin. The goal is the Travers. I think the other 2 horses are more likely to win tomorrow. I think Creator and Governor Malibu, Travers time, are the horses that I want.
Yep.
Now, at the same time with this race, and we've kind of gone off schedule, fellas, back in the studio, I understand. We're going to just keep Dan on right through the final 2 minutes here, and I'll kind of tee things up. But with Gunrunner, I feel like this mile and an eighth, this is what he wants. I don't know any further than that he wants, because if you go back to that Kentucky Derby, you stop that at the quarter pole.
Right.
He and Nyquist are right there.
Right.
Together.
Right.
Now, I understand the real running hasn't started yet. But they both went fast, and they were close to that pace. So I think it's a fascinating race, the Grade 1 Betfair.com Haskell Invitational on Sunday afternoon. 6 horses. We'll find out. Hopefully Mother Nature cooperates with us. Dan, we're going to keep you right here through this final piece. Fellas back in the studio, if we could just throw up the DRF weekend slate, DRF Live for tomorrow afternoon anyway, starting at 4 o'clock Eastern. You'll start with Dan Illman and Mike Beer. I believe we're going to have a period of the 3 of us on camera. I know, lucky all of you at home to watch. You get the 3 of us. We'll go over some races, including the Jim Dandy, and then Dan and I will transition into the Southern California stuff, obviously culminating in Beholder running in the Clement L. Hirsch. She'll take on Stellar Wind. I know you didn't look at the race. Just a final brief thought. Idiot or maybe enlightened that I think Beholder's the best horse in the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have a lot of people agree with you. I don't think she's done anything. We haven't seen her. There haven't been any bad races from her, and so I mean, certainly, but by that metric, you could make that argument. For me, it's Tepin right now. I want to believe that she is, sort of the next big star in this game, and she's done nothing to disappoint me over the past 8 months to a year.
Yeah,
so
she's basically been perfect.
Yeah, so and same thing with her. I mean, there was a period there where I was like, well, she doesn't like to run over this kind of track. She might be, and then now I have no concerns with her whenever she's running. For me, unless the jockey falls off, she's winning. So I mean, for me, it's Tepin. I mean, the race at Ascot, was just a powerful race. And if you're a fan of racing too, because I think when you have these discussions about who is the best in the game right now, your sort of fandom really comes into it a lot. And so for me, if you're a fan of the game, there's there are not many things more breathtaking than that race. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing, kind of what happens here at Saratoga. Hopefully, we will get that sort of dream matchup that we talked about with Lady Eli. If Lady Eli comes back in the Boston Spa, would be really nice. I mean, Lady Eli, if you would ask me a year ago, I was like, wow, she was incredible. I'm just so excited.
She was Tepin before Tepin, even though she was a 3-year-old.
Yeah. No, I can't wait to see her come back. And really, it's like, it's the year, all the ladies, man. The ladies are just dominating, and it's cool to see. We've had so much emphasis the past few years on, the 3-year-old colts and the Triple Crown series, and obviously with good reason. We've had some incredible horses, but it's good to see sort of the ladies get the spotlight a little bit.
Dan Tordjman at Danonymous Man on Twitter, danonymousracing.com, America's Best Racing, the Jockey Club. Thank you, my
brother.
friend. We'll do this again,
Appreciate
obviously. Thanks for watching at home if you've been on DRF Live this entire time. Thanks to our friends at Monmouth Park for allowing us to come down here. If you go podcast-wise, YouTube, SoundCloud, DRF.com, iTunes, ESPN.com. You got all sorts of different ways of finding us here. Again, thank you to everyone. Production, well done, gentlemen. We're going to sign off here. We're going to sign off, though, and send it to the formulator race of the day for Friday. Race number 2, the CTBA Stakes. Babies, 2-year-olds, Del Mar. Let's throw it to that. We'll see you guys next week here on the Matt Bernier Show.